I did not have a plan 3 years ago to start a podcast. I did not have a plan to have the newsletter. I thought I was still going to be a stylist. But as you guys have heard on previous episodes, I fell into this by accident, but here we are, and it's a good thing we are here. So today, I'm going to peel back the curtain on how the Kickback platform, because it's not just the podcast, but how this podcast and the newsletter and the platform as a whole started, why it still matters, especially now, because this platform is not just content, it is our safe space to feel celebrated, to advocate for economic progress, and to be in community with one another, because community is what we need. Welcome to the Kickback with Keri podcast. I'm your host, Keri Henderson, and today you are kicking back with me. Yes, y'all, we have a solo episode. I have done 16 episodes so far, and this is the first time y'all gonna sit down and we gonna chat. Now, this is the episode I should have started the podcast with, but 16 episodes later, it's fine. As long as we have this solo podcast episode where I'm gonna sit down and explain to you why the Kickback platforms exist in the first place. Now, I will tell you this. I did not have a plan 3 years ago to start a podcast. I did not have a plan to have the newsletter. I thought I was still going to be a stylist. But as you guys have heard on previous episodes with Brittany, and you heard in the bonus episode that was shared last week, I fell into this by accident, but here we are, and it's a good thing we are here. So today, I'm going to peel back the curtain on how the Kickback platform, because it's not just the podcast, but how this podcast and the newsletter and the platform as a whole started, why it still matters, especially now when our community is under attack, because this platform is not just content, it is our safe space to feel celebrated, to advocate for economic progress, and to be in community with one another, because community is what we need. So let's get into the episode. So first things first, before I take you guys back to how we got here, the platform right now, the Kickback with Keri platform, is a newsletter, it is a podcast, and I also host community events. And the reason why this platform exists, one, is to reaffirm who we are. One of the things I do in the newsletter is I open with the affirmation every single month, because I need you to be reminded of who you are and whose you are. We share in the newsletter and on this space great information about the work that we're doing in our communities. It is also a platform to help you discover brands. As you guys know, most of these episodes are interview episodes. Why? Because I want you to discover brands that you probably never heard of before. And these are a lot of smaller brands that don't get the platforms and recognition that I think they deserve. So that's why I'm bringing them to you. And most importantly, I want to keep you informed. So one of the things I do very well is share information and resources. People ask me all the time, like, how did you know about that? How did you hear about that? Even when it comes to some of these brands that I've been sharing, people have, discovered them and wondered how I found out about them. So the Kickback platform is a space for celebration. It is a space to acknowledge the work that we're doing. It is a space for you to learn and discover new brands, authors, media, music. It is a space for you to be informed, because we need to be informed about what is happening. This platform has grown. What I love most, I will say, one person asked me recently, they're like, so why did you start your podcast? What was the intent behind it? And you guys have heard me say this before on previous episodes. It's like, if one person makes a buying decision, if one person does something different and positively in their life from watching an episode, I have done my job. I've seen people on YouTube say, oh, great episode. Because of that episode, I just bought from Jaylani Jules, or someone bought from Doso Beauty because they really, really enjoyed that conversation. I've had family members reach out to me and say, thank you for that estate planning episode. They needed to get their paperwork in order. And we literally were online trying to find them an estate planning attorney. And so the idea of the podcast specifically is to help each other shop, not just support, but shop and be consumers of each other's brands, but also do the things that we need to do to make sure we got our house in order, doing the things that we're supposed to do. So that has probably been the favorite part, and why I started the podcast is like, if someone's brand could get another sale, if someone can do the things that they're supposed to do that they've been putting off for a very long time, that's going to help them in the long run, I have done my job. But what you're probably wondering is, how did we get here? So I was in LA for 4 years. I was pursuing a styling career. I had a 9-to-5, but I was also working as a fashion stylist and also working as an assistant. And during COVID, one of the things I have shared before in previous episodes is, during COVID, God said styling is over. And so I decided, if I'm not doing styling anymore, I'm moving back to Maryland. And that's exactly what I did. But if you know me, you know I'm very type A, and I'm very much, I need to have a plan. I need to know where we're going, how we getting there, what time my bags need to be packed. And so when I came back to Maryland and did not have a plan on what the next pursuit was, I was a little confused. And so instead of, actively trying to figure out what that looked like, I just focused on working the consulting job that I had. So I had my 9 to 5 and I did consulting on the side for a family friend's business. And so I did that for a year, just living my life, not focusing on what was next. And then the idea of a newsletter came to mind. A friend had worked she was in like a mastermind group, and she was working on putting together a newsletter. And I thought, a newsletter might be a good idea because I had my previous email list. I did not want to get rid of my email list. I loved engaging with my subscribers. So I said, hey, you guys, we're going to do a newsletter. And in that newsletter, I started sharing articles from different sources, Because of Them We Can, Black Enterprise, Afrotech, just sharing information about what people in our community were doing. Great information, great stories, introducing you to new businesses and brands. I started sharing information about, local businesses, like this is the item of the month. And over time, that newsletter has evolved. It looks really good. I'm going to toot my own horn. The newsletter looks really, really good. My dad even called me recently and told me he was like, I'm just so impressed. Like, how do you find all this information? The newsletter is just so good. And he asked how he could share it with his friends. Okay, it is that good. He might be biased because he's my dad, but I'm going to take his word for it that it is that good. And from the newsletter, I said, okay, we're going to do this newsletter. But then I had a thought. I said, well, the Kickback with Keri doesn't just have to be a newsletter. It could be a platform where we extend beyond the newsletter. And that's where we have community events. So we do community events throughout the year to support nonprofits in Maryland. And then the podcast came along. So in my mind, I said, I'm going to have a newsletter, a podcast, and community events. And that is how we got here. I knew I wanted a podcast where we could go beyond the headlines for brands. We see, Boy Crew Wines is the first Black family-owned winery in Maryland. But how did they become that? How did that brand start? Or, Camille is launching, I see online, she's launching this baby food company for the littles, but we don't know her story. And so the podcast emerged as a place where we could get behind the curtain and get the real stories and understand the grit that it takes to build amazing brands and introduce you to some brands that you guys should know and we should be shopping and supporting. So that's how we got here. So the question is, now that we're here, why does it matter? And if you guys have been paying attention, you know that we're in a state of an emergency. The National Urban League put out a state of emergency report. I actually shared it in the August issue of the newsletter because our civil rights, our economic, mobility, all of that is being targeted in the current climate that we're in. And so not only is a platform a great place for us to be safe and to have joy, because when you open the newsletter or you hear a great conversation, some of us on this couch, depending on the episode, we kiki up here, okay? We had some champagne, all the things, but it's really about building community, creating economic legacy for our brands and representation. And so right now, you'll hear me say over and over and over again, community will save us. Community is what we need. And I always tell people, if there's a brand out there or something that you need, there's a Black business that has probably made it. From detergent, which I have a Black-owned brand upstairs in my washer and dryer, to candles. Anything that we need, a Black-owned brand has probably made it. And so that's why a platform like this is so important. It's because it teaches us to shift our shopping habits. It teaches us to shift in how we think about business and success. And it really gets us in the mindset of looking out for Black businesses first, right? When we're going shopping or we're looking for a specific item, supporting those brands first before we support others. So I just wanted to take some time, give you guys a little insight on how we got here. To be honest, the Kickback platform, it may be 3 years old with the newsletter, but the podcast is still new. This is the start of season 3. We do have a great season coming up with some amazing conversations with some community-centric people who join me on the couch. There is also another solo episode, so I may be infusing some more solo episodes throughout. But I just thank you all for tuning in. I thank you guys for listening. I thank you guys for sharing and commenting on YouTube and leaving reviews. I don't know where we're going yet. I'm just here for the ride, and I hope you will continue to join me on this ride. And I cannot wait for you guys to check out this new season. If there's any episodes that y'all missed, go ahead and check those out too. Leave a comment, leave a review. I'm going to keep asking you guys to leave a comment and leave a review because that helps other people discover this episode or discover this podcast. I appreciate you guys for tuning in each and every week that the podcast episodes dropped. Even when we were on a break, we were dropping some hot takes, some bonus episodes, and y'all were still tuning in. So I appreciate you. Thank you for being a part of the Kickback community, and let's get ready for an amazing season. If you enjoyed this episode, drop a comment below, and don't forget to subscribe to the Kickback with Keri newsletter.